How do you see your stories? What angle do you look at it from? What's your point of view? Good question, I think, for myself, because often I find when I'm telling stories, I'm telling them from like the first person, from my eyesight point of view. But it's not just that. Sometimes I found when I'm looking through my story ideas, I realize maybe my point of view is kind of narrow. Well, I got this here for a demonstration. You ever, toilet paper tube. When you were a kid, you ever tape these together and still got one sheet left on it there. You ever tape these together and make binoculars or telescopes? Well, when you look through this, it kind of narrows your point of view. Here, let me show you. Where'd I go? Oh, there I am. Look, all you see is my face. But now you see everything around me. Sometimes when we look at our stories, it's like looking at that event through one of these guys. We just see that event. And sometimes I've realized there's not really a story in that event on its own. I did that myself. I was going through my journal and went through my list of story ideas, and I realized that's a nice event, but I don't know if that would make a very good story all by itself. But then I discovered this. Maybe that single event was just the catalyst in the story, but I realized I had the story event here, but if I pulled this guy away from my eyes and stopped just looking at this, I could see what happened before, and I could see what was going on later. And sometimes this was a week, a month, hours before. Sometimes this over here was hours, a month, years later. And that's the story. That's where the story is. But it took me changing a point of view and kind of looking at what's called context. What was the context of that event? Well, some of these things I found out it would happen while I was working at a certain location. Or maybe this thing happened at a family reunion that I remember. Or maybe I realized I was just looking at it straight on because that's what affected me most, but I didn't really think about how did it affect me afterwards. What did it change? What was I doing before that I don't do now? What was the change that happened? It's from looking at too narrow of an event or memory, but when I pulled back, when I put on my telephoto lens and backed up and zoomed out, not zoomed in, zoomed out, to a nice wide angle view, I got context. That's what it's called when you see what happens before and what happens after. Put that event in context, and maybe that's where your story is. I found that with many of mine because I got all excited, and about 2 years ago, I went and, about a year ago now, I wrote down hundreds of what I called story ideas that were just single events and memories. But then I went back through a year later and looked at those and thought, from what I've learned since then about storytelling and prepping and kind of getting stories ready to actually speak, they weren't really good stories. They were kind of like anecdotes or events that happened, but on their own, not such a great story. Here's an example. One more drink. I like this cup. It's a prop. I normally wouldn't use it, but it looks really cool on camera, doesn't it? So, that was about a few months, well, it was still dark at night. So I'm saying February, probably in February, maybe January. Well, my kids were gone. So my wife and I, we had the granddaughters. They're kindergarten and second grade at the time. Now the second grader had a performance that we had to get her to 30 minutes early because it was Pioneer Days or something. So she had this little house on the prairie dress on, complete with a bonnet and all that kind of stuff. And she was all dressed up and ready to go for this, what was it? Oh, it was like a concert. They were singing old time, like wagon train songs or songs that people sang back in a little house on prairie days, from what I understand. Which is kind of what it was when we got there. It was short. Anyway, So we go out to do this. Now, we're in the house, we're getting ready to leave, and I got the 7-year-old and the 5-year-old, and my wife had to leave to go do some other stuff, so I was there by myself. Just had to get her there early. Then the other grandparents came over, Grandpa and Grandma, because they were going to go too. So I said, well, let's get going. So we get one kid ready to go, and she goes out the door, and we have this little dog that my daughter just got. It's this Labradoodle puppy that I guess they're very expensive. Well, she's a runner, and she's stupid. So she gets out and takes off across the cul-de-sac and down the street. So we're chasing after her, and I yell at the kid, stop chasing her, because if you chase her, she just runs. She's automotively ignorant. She would just run out into the main street and end up a puppy pancake. So Grandma and Grandpa and me and these two girls are out in the cul-de-sac chasing this dog around. Now my older granddaughter, the 7-year-old, picks up this big giant branch that had fallen out of a tree and is running after her because the dog loves to chase sticks. And we're yelling, come on, come on. And we finally, that's how we got her in her house. We had the 5-year-old hold the door open. Me and Grandpa and Grandma are out on the perimeter so this dog can't get away. And the 7-year-old takes this stick and throws it down the stairs into the entryway, and the dog runs in after it. Well, altogether that took almost 20 minutes of chasing that dog. You get up next to her, she'd run away. Now, if I told that story, it would be like that stupid dog story, because to me it was just a big inconvenience. But I thought, what if I backed out of myself and I saw this story from the perspective of the neighbor watching it through her window? It would have gone more like, yeah, I was looking out the window and there's all this noise in the cul-de-sac, and I looked outside and there's a bunch of people chasing this little dog around. There was these 2 old guys and an old lady, and there was this kid dressed up in like a Little House on the Prairie dress, and then there was this other kid that was just yelling all the time, and a little short one. And these old folks, it was funny, we were watching them run around the cul-de-sac trying to catch this dog. That dog was fast. They'd get right up to it and it would just take off. And then the one old guy, he's yelling at the kids, stop chasing the dogs, you'll just keep running, which was true because that dog just kept running. And then one of the other old guys said, go throw the stick in the house. So this girl with this giant stick, I thought she was going to beat that dog at first. I thought, why is this? You should have seen her in this Little House on the Prairie dress, chasing the dog, like carrying like a baseball bat, like she's going to beat it down. I wasn't sure what was going to happen there. And then she throws this big, huge log down inside the house. It goes, it's a split level, so it went down, and that dog went running in after it, and a little short one slammed the door, and then one old guy said, all right, get in the car, we're late. Well, that's a perspective of the neighbor. It was actually quite entertaining and possibly even funny. From my perspective being involved, it was not funny. It was not entertaining. But when I backed out of myself and I didn't see my story through my toilet paper tube and thought, I wonder what it looked like from over here. Or I wonder what this event looked like from over here. And suddenly I realized, oh, that could probably make a pretty good story. A little development, but it would work. Chasing the dog in the street. I think I'd title that story, Why I Prefer Cats. They get out, you just close the door. They'll be fine. Well, at least the way I grew up with cats. So there's the thing. Point of view. If you're struggling trying to find an event that turns into a good story, maybe you need to pull a toilet paper tube away and get some context on it. See how it's going. Write it down. Maybe even tell it as you know it now. Go ahead and record your practice video with what you know now. Get that down and have something to look at and go, I remember that this was at that family reunion when great-grandma fell in the lake when she was trying to get into the canoe. And so what you have there would be like a story of a family reunion and the events that happened. Or for me, I have this story in my events. I ran over a moose with my Toyota RAV4. It was kind of a frightening experience, but in itself, didn't really make a very interesting story. But what if I change the story to a story about our Toyota RAV4 It actually ran over 2 moose. Went off the road so many times I can't count. And other adventures that we took it. There you go. So there's a story. It's about the adventures with our Toyota RAV4 and how my son forgot to put oil in it because of his ADHD and the motor blew up, and well, that's a different story. Hey, you know what I mean. Go back and look at some of those story ideas that you were thinking, it might not be a very good story. Back up and look in context, in front and behind. There's probably a good story in there. Try it out, record it, see what you think, work on it. Hey, that's all I got today. I'm going to finish my coffee, so stop recording.